Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
Fridays to me, talking about the Bills. What else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Massare, here with Mike Bundt for our brand new special Tuesday edition. We'll be here 7 o'clock. That's where the show will live now, 7 o'clock Tuesdays on the Cover One Podcast Network with a multitude of great shows here on the network. Check out the show schedule. It is looking good. We are followed by a really great show in Mitch Morse, Eric Turner, and Kendall. They'll be breaking down some great O-line film and what they have got going on over there. So make sure you tune in right after us for a live appearance by Mitch Morse, the center of the Buffalo Bills. But Mike, first and foremost, how you feeling on this Tuesday? Normally we're on Fridays. So what's going on in your world?
Yeah, it's exciting to be on Tuesday nights. We don't have to give up part of our weekend now going forward. So this is an upgrade for us. Just another beautiful day in Buffalo, New York. Rained a little bit earlier, but nice evening right now. So just enjoying this on a work night. This is going to be something I'm going to have to adjust to going forward.
7 o'clock too. So most shows on the Cover One Network will be either 7 or 9 o'clock time slots as the week goes on, Monday through Thursday. We'll have great content. Maybe we'll jump back in on a Friday as the season goes on for any preview shows that we might need to do. But we appreciate everybody following us along here on a Tuesday at 7 p.m. For this special edition of the training camp edition, part 2, Mike, where we let off last week, really just Friday, I guess, where we were talking about, really breaking down how we think the betting lines will turn out, what we think. So check out that show if you want some of our interest and input on the early betting lines for Josh Allen, for some of the running situation that we have going on there. This week, I wanted to kind of focus on, kind of that, who do you think will be the most important player this season? I kind of want to talk a little bit about that, like who you think will really help the Bills. And we're going to put Josh Allen aside here. Who's another name that we can all look forward to seeing that is going to take the Bills to the next level? That's a really good point of conversation here, July 5th. So now we're only a whopping, roughly 19 days from training camp, Mike? So
yeah, 19 days. Crazy to think about.
Yeah, what are some things you're looking forward to in 19 days? I guess we're going to start there as we, countdown to training camp continues, 19 days away. The next time we'll be with you 12 days away. So is there something certain? I know health, but tell me a player that really is pivotal to the Bills' success this year that isn't Josh Allen.
I mean, if you're going to look at the entire roster, there's one noticeable change that happened this offseason. So I hate to go with the most obvious answer, but it's obviously Von Miller. You gotta can't wait to see how he looks with the Bills jersey on up close in person. And I know a lot of people in these situations, when they're asked this question, they're going to want to go with an underrated person or someone under the radar. Von Miller is a future Hall of Famer. The Bills are paying him the big money for a reason. He's the guy to watch out for because really what he did with the Rams in the playoff run, and we always talk about this on their show, that was the difference in them getting over the hump and winning the Super Bowl last season. So if the Bills get that Von Miller come playoff time this year, he will be the reason why they end up winning it all.
Now, Mike, what are your expectations for Von Miller? I know we talked a lot about him, being a guy that's a game changer. Are you expecting him to, we got to get to the playoffs first. So previous to the playoffs, previous to anything that happens in January and beyond, what are your expectations for Von Miller this season? Are you expecting gaudy sack numbers? Are you expecting a locker room presence? I guess tell us why Von Miller beside the contract.
So when you're looking at the stats, he obviously hasn't been the high double-digit guy that he was earlier in his career in recent years. But he still should be around a 10-sack guy going forward. Even if the Bills do manage his snaps a little bit more, I would expect him to be that much more explosive when in the game if they do manage his snaps. If not, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to go after opposing quarterbacks. In addition to that, you would have to assume he's going to be a leader. He has his he has his pass rusher summit every summer. He had Greg Rousseau. He had some other Bills rushers there. That's going to be valuable knowledge for the Bills' young pass rushers that are hoping to take that step to the next level on this team. So leadership, production, and then just being there in the crucial moments. This is a guy that has made plays at the biggest stage at the biggest times. So you combine those three things, and that's why I have him as their most impactful player going into this season, not named Josh Allen.
Now, do you think that the Bills are in a system that'll allow for Von Miller to flourish? Do you think that they're trying to get him in there to kind of attack the defense in a way that, kind of sets them apart? Are you looking for a difference maker in Von Miller? Are you looking for a locker room presence? Do you think the Bills scheme allows for something other than those simulated pressures, those pressure percentages? Or are you thinking that Von Miller, at the end of the day, let's throw it all out, contract out, let's throw away everything that he's done? Do you think he'll bring the quarterback to the ground?
Yeah, of course he's going to bring quarterbacks to the ground. There's some players, obviously, that fit in certain schemes better than others, where you don't want to pay the big money and have them be out of fit. Von Miller is one of the best players of all time. It doesn't matter what you do with Von Miller. You find a way to make it work. And with a guy like him, he'll be successful in the majority of things that the Bills toss at opposing offenses this year. The only thing that you really worry about is with him being 33, is he going to lose a step at some point? Hopefully, if he does, it's a little bit later in his Bills contract, not the first or second year. You hope that you can get at least 2 highly productive seasons out of him still. And also with him cashing this huge check, you hope that he still has the motivation and incentives to really try to finish his career off strong. And I think he does have that incentive. You heard him talk about it when he signed in Buffalo. There's only been one other player in the history of the NFL that won a Super Bowl on 3 different teams. But I believe it was Matt Millen. He didn't even play technically on the one team that he had won a Super Bowl with. So Von Miller has a chance to make history and become the first player to actually play for 3 different teams that have won a Super Bowl. So I think that's all, well, besides the huge bag of cash, that's what he's playing for. He's going for that, and the money doesn't hurt as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, we appreciate everybody tuning in again to our special edition Tuesday 7:00 show, which we will be here. You'll find us here from now on. Also, a really great show schedule coming up. Like I mentioned earlier, we got Eric Turner, we got Kendall Merksey. We got a really good show coming up later. But, check out our premium content. We got some great writers over there. 5 Bills with the most approved entering training camp. We got that article up. We got the mythical 30-year jump, the misplaced hope for the next Josh Allen storyline up there. So make sure you go and check out our written content as well from, Greg Vorse. We have some really good stuff going on over there. So make sure you check out our premium content as well. We want to bring you guys the best content, both audio and podcast related, video related, as well as written. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. Smash the like button. That helps us produce and bring more content and do more days, do more shows. So make sure you do that and review us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. That would mean the world. So once again, you can find us, the Going Deep Podcast, here Tuesdays throughout the season on the Cover One Podcast Network right here. We'll be bringing, like I've mentioned before, great guests. I got a bunch lined up for this season. I cannot wait for some of these additions and some of these great crossover shows that we're going to do. And who better than the experts inside their room? So we're going to bring in some credentialed guys. We're going to bring in some really great some minds there for that. So make sure you tune in all season long as we get very close to training camp here, and going to bring you great coverage all training camp from the Cover One team. But I think the number one people that, everyone's talking about right now, Mike, and, maybe rightfully so, is kind of how he went out last year. But Gabriel Davis, he's a big point of conversation right now. And, we'd be remiss to not talk about him as July 5th. And this is the point of conversation. What are the expectations around Gabriel Davis as he's got to be one of the players that, count down to training camp? He's one of the players that people are the most interested counting down to training camp, Mike. So give me a little riff about your opinion, at least, on Gabriel Davis, your expectations. I know we said last week on the betting show that you were, kind of expecting the higher touchdowns, maybe not the high catches guy that you were thinking, but I guess elaborate on that. Tell me where you're at with Gabriel Davis, and do you see him as a true wide receiver 2 in the Buffalo Bills offense?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I think Gabe Davis is going to be a great fit for the Bills going forward, and hopefully for many years to come. When he's been given opportunities in his rookie year and then last year in his second year, he's stepped up big and has had a high efficiency. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to be an instant superstar once he becomes the Bills' wide receiver number 2. That doesn't mean that you should instantly project him for 1,000 yards and 11, 12 touchdowns. But what that does tell me is he does have the potential to be a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, and he does have the potential to be a double-digit touchdown wideout on this Buffalo Bills squad. Now, would I pick either of those to happen this year? That's a little bit tough. I'm higher on the touchdown numbers than I am the total yardage, and I'm sorry about my screen and the glare. But the reason why I'm higher on the touchdowns is we've already seen in his limited sample sizes that he can light it up in the end zone. 4 touchdowns against Kansas City in the playoff game. He had another one against New England. You factor in the end of the regular season, he had double digits touchdowns already last year. And then you go into his rookie year, highly productive. Then in big moments, I think he will be a go-to wideout because of the plethora of different things he brings to the table. He can be explosive, get over the top. He can do a toe tap on the sideline. He can be a critical conversion guy on 3rd and 4th downs. So I definitely do think he'll step up in that regard. The 1,000-yard milestone, that's a little bit more difficult to project him to get to, because you not only then are you saying he's going to make all these big plays, but you're also saying that he's going to get the ball 60 plus, 70 plus times. And it's possible as a wide receiver too, but you're assuming his target share is going to go up exponentially. And that's still a little premature to say that the Bills feel that strongly about him in that regard going forward.
Yeah, interesting point of conversation about his playing time last year, right? Was, well, he didn't come on, he played well at the end of the season. Well, 21 snaps week 2, 23 snaps week 3, 14 snaps week 5, in the 20s again in week 6, week 7, 19 snaps, 30 snaps in week 10, 19 snaps in week 11. I mean, there was at some point, there wasn't enough ball to go around. They were trying different things out. Dawson Knox was taking on a bigger role. They had Emanuel Sanders. They still had Cole Beasley early on last season. Really not until he proved to be a better option than some of those guys did he really start to see his snap counts go up. And that happened week 14, where the whopping 66 snaps, and he never let go of that. 63 the following week, 66, 67. Really a multitude of snaps, and he was very productive from, in those snaps. So I do believe that had a lot to go. And now, he's basically inheriting Emanuel Sanders' role. You have, in turn, Cole Beasley out the door, and he's going to be replaced. We'll see how that all turns out from Jamison Crowder in the slot. But, really, he's realistically stepping up. Remember, he was receiver 4. He was. I mean, he wasn't receiver 2 last year and didn't do anything with it. When he was the opportunity to unseat Emanuel Sanders, the reason that they didn't go out and get a veteran receiver like Manny thought they could potentially do, or a really highly ranked rookie receiver, he just gets the job done. And quite frankly, he's always going to be facing maybe the team's 3rd best corner. Sometimes your best corner or 2nd best corner is in the slot. Corner number 1's going to have to shade to Stephon Diggs. You're looking at a team 2nd, 3rd, sometimes even worse if there's injuries down the depth chart covering Gabriel Davis. That's going to be a huge piece to the puzzle, where who's going to be able to guard. And then, you're going to have the linebacker safety coverage over Dawson Knox. How are they going to match up with that now that they have a true number 2? That's going to be interesting to me. And a great point here that we see that was Brian Daboll to blame for not involving number 13 more. I think that is a really good talking point to where, I'm pretty critical of Brian Daboll. We'll see what he does in New York. He wasn't, I do believe that there was a little bit more, did the quarterback make the coordinator than there was, did the coordinator make the quarterback, at least in my opinion. And we're going to see both ways this year with what Ken Dorsey's going to be able to do with Josh Allen and what Brian Daboll is going to be able to do with Daniel Jones. So, Mike, we're going to have a good piece of the puzzle. What did he play a role in Gabriel Davis?
I want to add one thing to it too.
Yeah.
It felt like Gabe Davis had a super strong end stretch of last year because of what took place in the playoffs. Obviously, you have over 200 yards receiving in a playoff game with 4 touchdowns. That's one of the best receiving performances in the history of the NFL. And I don't care if it's the playoffs or regular season when it takes place. That's one of the greatest receiving games of all time, what we saw by Gabe Davis against Kansas City. But the truth was, Gabe Davis really didn't light it up down the stretch. He had a few good games. He started finding the end zone more. The Bills did start targeting him more. He did see the field over 70% of the snaps towards the end of the year, but he did not light it up. If anything, he actually had some bigger games towards the end of his rookie year than he did at the end of last year. The one thing, sorry about my phone going off. It's going off like crazy right now. I'll have to silence that in a second. But he obviously lit it up in the playoffs. But we'll see what he can do a whole year with that production. And hopefully, like the comments were saying, we'll see an increase overall. I'd guess in my mind, probably 800 yards around there, plus or minus 50 yards or so.
Yeah, and for me, we got to bring in some fringe statistics here, at least in my mind. Actually, we'll start with PFF. Hate him or love him, they have him as the 10th rated receiver in the NFL, actually, believe it or not. Him and Stephon Diggs are right there as true receiver ones based on their ratings. What's interesting to me what I'll take out of this, though, is that the 81 grade, pass blocking grade, is number 1 in the league over 600 snaps. He's the best pass blocking receiver in the league, which is very interesting to me, as well as his ability to run block. 72.5, he definitely is able to hold his weight and be a good blocker, top 10 in the league as well, and from the blocking perspective. So he does a lot well for the Bills. That is fringe stuff. He's great in the locker room. He has a great relationship with Isaiah McKenzie and others, as you can kind of see through the Bills embeddeds. So he'll bring that fringe stuff as well. Just a real workout machine. The first thing you see him running routes after he was drafted, you see him at his personal jugs machine. He's working out in his front yard in Florida. You have all of that stuff going on there for Gabriel Davis, and I do believe
that's a must watch for people that haven't seen it.
Yeah.
They even asked him, "What do you do when you're not training and you're not playing football?" And he said, "Literally, I just play video games. That's all I do. I train, I play football, and I play video games." And which, I mean, good for him. If he likes what he likes and he ends up being a great football player, that's all that matters. And the only other thing I would like to say too is last year, obviously, Emanuel Sanders started out as the 2. You had Cole Beasley in there, and Gabe didn't really get those opportunities. It will be interesting, like you said a few minutes ago, what will happen when he's getting matched up against the second best corner on an opposing defense? What will happen when teams start game planning for defending him? Will he still produce at the same level as he was when he was the 3rd, 4th, 5th option on the field?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And please set your clocks. 9 o'clock, we're going to have Eric Turner and crew with Mitch Morse here right now to talk offensive line and other things. So make sure you tune into that at 9 p.m. And speaking of that, we've seen some comments as, we've kind of talked about Gabriel Davis's countdown to training camp part 2 here at St. John Fisher College. Cover One's going to be bringing you great content all week long. We're going to be doing some collabs with all of our shows and our show schedules, but make sure you check out that great offensive line preview and segment we're going to have here at 9 o'clock. But speaking of the offensive line, Mike, it took them really until the end of the year to talk about what actually took to the end of the year to get going. We saw that Jacksonville game. We saw others early on that the offensive line just wasn't gelling. It just wasn't. It wasn't good. they couldn't even overcome it with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The running game couldn't get going. There was really in a hot, semi-meaningless football game down in Jacksonville. But the offensive line is now going to step up with Roger Saffold. What are your expectations? I know that you were, a little bit more down on the offensive line last year. What is your opinion now? Like, do you think Roger Saffold is going to be a contributing factor to the upgrade? Do you think, another year with Rick Bates? Do you think, do you trust Tommy Doyle to kind of be in that swing tackle? Do you think it's going to be Quisenberry? I guess talk to me about lots of good names there. Spencer Brown to take another step. What do you think's going on in your world in the offensive line? That's pivotal to Gabriel Davis getting the ball.
Yeah.
Really
so we've talked a little bit about this during the offseason, and obviously we addressed it last year on our previous show. The offensive line did not get the job done early on last season. They were a detriment to this team. They did not pass protect as well as they needed to at times. They were awful in short yardage situations where they needed a yard to go. It's a huge reason why Josh Allen was forced to run the ball as often as he did. When your quarterback is rushing for over 800 yards in a season, you either have Mike Vick, Lamar Jackson, or you don't have an offensive line run blocking for your running backs. And there was multiple times last year where they had small boxes and they still couldn't run effectively against them. And then midway through the season, you have the New England game, you have the Indianapolis game, you have multiple games where other teams really shoved it down the Bills' throats on the Bills' defense. And when the Bills couldn't really generate things, their offense felt lost. And then you saw the adjustment to where they started focusing on establishing Devin Singletary every game. That also coincided with Ryan Bates taking over at guard. And what did you start seeing? You started seeing a Bills offense that could pound the ball. They were playing more physical. They essentially became unstoppable at times. Obviously, the Jets game week 18 was a little bit poor at moments, but when they got it going, they were unstoppable. And these additions to their offensive line with Saffold and Quisenberry and some of the other guys, even for depth positions, it gives me a lot of encouragement, because I don't think you're going to suddenly see an elite pass blocking offense come out of nowhere. But you got one of the best O-line coaches in the game, and now you have physical guys that know how to create holes in the run game.
Yep.
I trust Josh, regardless of who's pass blocking in front of him, to be able to escape a lot of pressure and still make plays and find ways to get things done. What I didn't trust with the offensive line going into the offseason was that they were going to be able to make holes for running back. If now you got James Cook, now you got Singletary, if they're able to average 5 yards a carry and not have to go to Allen every single time on a third and short, a fourth and short, they're going to be a lot more effective from the start of the season to the end and be that much more dangerous in the playoffs. So I love Saffold. We'll see how it turns out with him. I think Cromer was the biggest addition of the entire offseason just because of his track record. And then you look at the other depth guys. I definitely think they're going to bring more of a physicality, and I think the Bills are going to rely on the run game a little bit more this season than what they have in the past couple years.
Yeah, and since Rick Bates took over, really, really interesting couple statistics here. Bills rushed for, call it the three, started week 16, 17, and 18. In the regular season, he went over 200 yards. The Bills rushed for 220 in those last 3 weeks, as well as another, even Devin Singletary alone had 81 yards in the playoff game against New England, 26 yards against Kansas City. But obviously we know that was a pretty pass happy game in that situation, but did pave the way for 7 Devin Singletary touchdowns in that time period. So the Bills were, figuring out the run, and they were really, much better in many situations in those scenarios. So the Bills ran the ball specifically a lot better. And what did the Bills go out and do? Like, that is the number one thing. They went out and got run blockers. not guys that focused on the pass. They went out and they think Josh Allen can be the deficiencies to the pass game. They went out and got guys that could really specifically focus and are run graders. They're just complete all across the board. And we'll hear from Mitch Morse later here in the next 90 minutes. But they went out and got Greg Van Roten, a guy that was pretty underrated. Not looking for him to step in and be a 17-game starter. You're looking for him to be a very big, important piece to the depth. You have Ike Butker coming off of Achilles injury, who should be ready at some point this season, who's going to be another depth piece. Then obviously you have the emergence of Rick Bates, who for playing 4 games got a pretty good sizable contract for showing that he was an important piece. The Bills believe so as well. They let the Bears go ahead and give him the offer. And then, obviously you have a Roger Saffold addition, another great player against run, and David Quesenberry. So you have really an increased run presence, and that I wouldn't count out at any point that, that the run might be that important, that Quesenberry is going to be your 6th offensive lineman, and he's going to come in certain situations. If not, like, it is Spencer Brown's job, but I'm not always 100% sure what, Cromer will want to do here at the offensive line, especially if you get a net positive on the run. I'm not 100% sure it's locked in with that 5 at this point, but I do believe it is looking toward that as we approach training camp. But that is good. Mike, do you think that 5 starting unit is the 5? Do you think there's any flex there where maybe they like something from Quesenberry because they need to be better against the run, and he is one of the best run blocking offensive linemen in the league?
Yeah, so I do agree with that 5 right there. What's up, John?
Okay.
Thanks for listening once again. I think Deion Dawkins got great left tackle. You go Saffold left guard, Morse center.
Yep.
Those are all solid
Relax.
right there.
Yep.
Bates, we'll see what he does in a full season. Obviously, short-term sample size, lot to be encouraged by. But 6 games, I forget the exact amount of games, but 4, 5, 6 games as a starter doesn't really tell you what you're going to see during an entire season. So let's hope that Bates is able to carry over what we saw towards the end of last season. And then obviously Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown is kind of a little bit of an unknown still. I mean, he's a solid player, has a high upside, could be a force in the run game, but some of the numbers showed that he still needs some work on his pass protection. So it's not like Spencer Brown is a stud yet. Let's hope he becomes one. Let's hope that he continues on this positive development track that we've seen so far, but there's still room for a lot of growth in his game. What also I'm definitely encouraged by is the depth that this offensive line has. They brought in a lot of veterans that have starting experience on other teams that should be able to step up if needed. So I'm looking for nice battles during training camp to try to finish out this offensive line and make the final rosters of this team, because inevitably there's going to be a few guys that they cut at the end of August that are going to be picked up by other teams. And they're guys that could maybe even contribute on other teams, maybe not start at this point in their careers, but definitely lock down a backup role and make a start here or there if called upon. So definitely encouraged by this line. And I think gone are the days where your starters are below average and your backups don't even deserve to be on an NFL field. This is a quality offensive line, maybe not a top 10 unit, but a unit that will be strong overall, most likely this year.
Yeah. And, if you look at some advanced statistics based on some of their projections and what the offensive line is supposed to do, the Bills are ranked, they have a fairly high on the offensive line. Believe it or not, it's really funny, Mike, is that some of my, original rankings right now have the offensive line as a unit, a complete unit with all their signings and all their starters, as good as their receiver room. So that's going to be interesting to see if that holds up to be true. But, based on their total, their total in baseball, they use the word WAR, but their total ability to wins above replacement is 2.6 games above replacement. So, which is the receiver room.
It's a quality offensive line. Is the right side of the O-line still a concern? I think I just addressed that a little bit. Yeah, it's still a concern. It's not locked in stone that they're going to be great, the right side. Like we just said, Spencer Brown is not a guarantee to be a great player. Right now, I think he's going to be a good player. He shows a lot of potential run blocking. Still needs to improve, like I said, in the pass blocking. Is Bates going to be what we saw? Who knows? I mean, so yeah, it could be a concern. But I think you and I would both agree with this, Kev. There's reasons to be optimistic with both players. And until we're given more reasons to be negative than positive, I'm going to take the positive side with these guys. Neither of them have gone to the Cody Ford level of concern. So I think at this point, we'll see how it plays out. But I'm still encouraged by what I've seen by them.
Yeah, give the rankings too of this unit. You have a 31st ranked Greg Van Roten and Roger Saffold are actually ranked as bottom 1A starters. So they're like 1B starters. The Bills will carry both of them. Obviously, you have Ryan Bates, who's considered a second guard, which is what he would be on this team. So, you have a couple of already 3 players who are very usable in starting situations. Ike Butker comes in as a second guard. Meaning that he ranks with the second tier of guards based on his production. Is a good pass blocker, does struggle in the run. Cody Ford, who is a backup level, bench level player, who doesn't present too much unless Aaron Kromer can save him. So there's not much there in Ford to look forward to. But you never really know, as they are going to keep him for a final season for a reason. And as you turn to the tackle room, which is pretty interesting to me as well, you have actually Dawkins and Quisenberry as 2 top 18 level starters at the top tackle position. So, Spencer Brown, they do have as one of the worst rated tackles in the league. He did struggle mightily in pass. He looked awful in that Kansas City game. Actually, Josh Allen absolutely obliterated pass rushers and made it on his own realistically, because Darrell Williams and Spencer Brown got absolutely lit up from the right side. So we'll see if they're able to take it. And then behind them is obviously, Big Bobby Hart. He's just maybe one of the worst players on the team, but he is brought back for veteran depth. But I do believe Quisenberry will make sure that that's not a thing anymore. And then Tommy Doyle, who they'll probably hold on to as one of their last roster spots, 4th offensive tackle position. Tommy Doyle. It's really Tommy Doyle versus Bobby Hart in this position group, which you'd like to give it to Tommy Doyle, but you really, if something goes in Aaron Kromer's ear, you never really know what's going to happen in training camp in we're under 19 days.
That's the great unknown, Aaron Kromer. How does this all play out? And there's a lot of great material on him about how he likes to establish his offensive lines. He likes his guys that have versatility, that have the ability to play all over the line. And he finds, as we saw with Roger Saffold in the past, he can really elevate the performance of these guys. They say with Kromer that at the beginning of camp, it can be really ugly with the lines, but that's because he's getting them to do things that they've never done before. And he puts them in uncomfortable situations to see how they respond and what they can actually do. So if the Bills' offensive line looks like complete garbage the first week and a half of training camp, I beg everybody, don't panic, don't freak out. They can put it together, and I'm sure they will. But I'm not expecting it to be a great start to training camp come 19 days from now when they get things underway at St. John Fisher.
I like the Bates to Levitri comparison. I do believe that Bates could have that kind of similar move to him, that kind of similar ability against the pass, as well as maybe his ability to get to the second level against the run. So I do like what the Andy Levitri to Rick Bates comparison that's going on too. So that's very interesting to me. I do believe that, you have, being basically admitting that one of his biggest mistakes was giving up on Teller too early. That's maybe why he's going to squeeze every last thing he might have out of Cody Ford rather than take a 7th. I don't think he sees, at least for this roster anymore, maybe early on with Teller they did, trying to get Josh Allen. They don't see that motivation to go ahead and get a 7th, who, quite frankly, they just use on priority UDFAs at this point, whether it's, another cornerback or whether it's their buddy's receiver. It doesn't really matter. They don't need that plethora of late round draft choices anymore. I do believe that they'll try to see if Aaron Kromer can get the most out of Cody Ford as humanly possible. Yeah. And maybe have at least some type of backup position for him in a spot situation, at least for the season. And I guess you never really know, but I do believe Bates is going to add that final dynamic. And we'll hear from Mitch Morris here at 9:00. We'll see if he has anything to say about what his expectation for Aaron Kromer and the rest of the offensive line unit is here. So tune into that at 9 p.m. Smash the like button, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts if you can. It helps us bring you guys great content, giveaways. We're going to be doing some cool things. I still promised you guys, at least my Friday crowd, I hope some of you are here. I did promise you guys a live rip And if you guess the players, I'm going to send out some really cool, hopefully good cards here too, probably before training camp kicks off. So we'll look forward to that in the next week or two. Definitely going to get to that, Mike, as Tuesdays at 7 p.m. is a thing here for the Going Deep podcast. So appreciate all of our listeners, live listeners, as well as audio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Appreciate you guys tuning in over there as well for all of your listening pleasure. But Mike, what's really interesting to me is, do you think, let's put aside the receiving game for a second, offensive line we've talked about. Do you think that this running room will get going this year? And if so, who? Do you think it's a Devin Singletary contract year? Do you think it's that Cook will take over by the end of the year? What is your prediction for the 2022 Buffalo Bills running back room, which right now is ranked as their weakest unit in terms of WAR and wins above replacement?
So I do think they're going to be more effective than what they have been in the past years. And that's because I believe the Bills are going to make a commitment to running the ball more effectively this year. I don't think the Bills suddenly become a run-first team or anything like that. The Bills' offensive identity is obviously Josh Allen and passing the ball around. But the type of linemen that they added during the offseason, as we just addressed, were guys that were very strong or had a strong record in the past of run blocking. And you don't target one specific theme over and over and over again at various offensive line positions unless you're making a committed effort to improve that part of your offense. So to me, yeah, this running back unit is going to be more successful this year. Is it going to be a result of improved play by the running backs, or is it going to be the result of improved play by the offensive line? I would guess it's probably going to be more based on the improved play of the offensive line. Devin Singletary is a good back in the NFL. I don't think he'll ever be great, but he's a good back. But he's also a guy that in this offense, I don't think you're ever going to see him rush for more than 800 yards most seasons. I think he's a 600 to 800 yard back that's going to average around 4.5+ yards per carry because he's going to be facing light boxes. And then James Cook is going to add that pass catching dimension out of the backfield. I think he's the one I'm more excited about because we already know what Devin Singletary can bring to the table. And I think he's going to continue to do what he's done his first 3 years in Buffalo. But I'm really excited to see what James Cook can do, catching screens, going out, catching some slants, and bringing a new dimension that we really haven't seen out of this Bills offense in recent years. We really have not seen the screen game or scenarios where you're seeing yardage after the catch. And a lot of people will say, well, you got to get players that have that yak. Well, a lot of times it's your scheme and what you're doing to set it up. And I think the Bills now have some players where they can actually now attack defenses in a different way, which will, like I said, I think drastically improve this backfield.
Mike, do you re-sign Devin Singletary, knowing what you know now? And if so, what kind of contract are you going to give him?
Yeah, so it depends on what he wants. I see no reason not to re-sign him if he's being reasonable and realizes that he'll never be at 1,000-yard running back on the Bills. Like if he can accept that he's a 600-yard running back and maybe like a 200-300-yard receiver and take something like a middle of the line value deal, then yeah, absolutely, I want to re-sign him. But if he's looking to cash in and get a deal that says I can be a premier number one back somewhere else in the NFL because I was the starting running back on one of the best offensive teams in the NFL for 3-4 years, then no, you let him walk. It all depends on what he's asking for. I don't give him anything more than mid-tier. Like he's not a top 10 running back. If anything, he's a 15 to 20 running back. Maybe he has more talent and we just don't see it because he's limited with his opportunities. But I don't think any running back that's going to be on this Bills offense is going to be a premier running back just based on the things that they do. I think they want a 50-50 split. And I think as long as you're going to be splitting carries and splitting the workload, it's all about being reasonable and taking value deals. So we'll see what he wants. Does he want to win and stay in Buffalo, or does he want to cash in when he can? I can't blame him if that's what he wants.
So, Mike, if you put him in the 15 to 20 range, pay wise, cap wise, that would put him in the Nyheim Hines, Jamal Williams, Gus the Bus Edwards, James Conner, Kenyon Drake, Josh Jacobs range. That's between $3, $7, and $5 million.
Yeah, I'm
you feel
fine
comfortable
with
in that range?
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I'd even be fine if they went a little bit higher than that.
Okay.
Not saying they need to, but once you start getting to like 7, 8, 9 million, like that, then numbers are getting ridiculous. If you're paying him like 4, 5, 6 million, like whatever, the cap's going to continuously go up. I mean, I know Bean has to be smart, and you don't want to ever waste money on something that doesn't need to be spent, but you don't want to be drafting a running back in the 3rd round every year too. While we're at it right now, like we are kind of in a pattern right now where you got 3 running backs in your backfield. 2 of them were 3rd round picks and 1 is the 2nd round pick. Eventually you want to get out of that. And you'd like to address other positions in those early rounds. The Bills haven't needed to because they have such a strong roster, but as they start losing talent, because of just being a great roster with players wanting to get more money, you hopefully can use running back later in the draft and not be using it so early.
Fair enough. And if you're talking strictly cap hits here, really only 7 players have a $7 million or more cap hit. You got Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Austin Eckler.
Like what would you near? Like, I would say 5 million. I'd be comfortable with 4 or 5 million. I mean, like
I'm probably in the 4 range. I think if you're in the 4 range, that's realistic. As you get more, I do believe the Bills will bow out of that. I do believe he's probably more on that, Kenyon Drake level. Who Kenyon Drake has been good at times. James Conner, who had those crazy touchdown years. So I do believe he thinks he fits. I mean, even Leonard Fournette's still only getting like cap hit raw.
So if he came to you, and who knows what he wants, like obviously running backs have a short shelf life in the NFL, but if Singletary came to you and was like, I want 3 years, 15 million, 5 per, do you give that? I mean, do you think that's unreasonable?
The 3 with the 5 isn't a number I like. I like the 2 with the 5. I'll go 10, but the 3 for the 5 starts to push me out. I'll give him one or the other. So if you want to go 2 for 5, I'm in. If you want to give me a discount for giving you the 3rd year, you want to go 3 for 12, 3 for 13. I like that. I think every $1 million matters on a team that is sitting around $3, $4, $5 million of cap space every year now. So I do believe that money matters. So 3 for 12, 3 for 13, I'm looking good at. 2 for 10. Those are about the numbers that I'm feeling pretty good at. But if you have a big James Cook year, and you're confident in some other moves that you might make this season, maybe Duke Johnson shows you a little bit of something. I don't know. I do believe that could price the Bills out of a $5 million running back personally, especially when you have Cook on the books at $1.5 million. So that's what's going to be interesting.
I mean, that's the other way you could look at it too, though. If you have Cook on the book for 1.5, you could look at how much are we going to allot for the entire room. If you have one guy in a little bit higher contract and then somebody else one, you're combining to only pay 6.5. I mean, I guess it just depends how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at positional spending across the league and you look at the Bills, they only pay, close to a league low in running back total salaries. They pay $6.7 million in total running back fullback money, which is toward the bottoms of the league. And total, amount spent in that room. So to me, it's
do you believe the rumors? So like in the offseason, the rumor was that the Bills, I wish I could get this to stop beeping. The rumor in the offseason obviously was that the Bills were interested in Christian McCaffrey. Like, so is that a rumor that you believe? Is that a rumor that you don't believe? Because if you're taking on Christian McCaffrey, then that would totally change the entire track record, how you would view Brandon Beane. If you suddenly go from barely paying your running backs to going after one of the most expensive running backs in the NFL, that would tell me that maybe Brandon Beane doesn't care as much about paying guys as what he would seem to believe. I personally never really bought into the Christian McCaffrey rumors as much as maybe other people did, but that would be an interesting thing to know.
I mean, I think that there's for the Bills, it's all like, look at, I don't know how much they were willing to take on a top end. I mean, they've already spent a ton of assets at that position historically and in the draft. You're talking about 2 second-round picks, a first-round pick. You're talking about historically being able to spend at least decent money in that room. So I think if a position like running back presents itself to where it is a dynamic player like a McCaffrey comes available, they take on some of that dead cap hit. I do believe that it's, never say never. You're right. But I don't believe that it's going to be something they're going to want the same room as this year that they're paying $6.7 million. They're going to want that next year with the same room at $12 million. I do not believe they double the budget unless you're adding an incredible asset in the names of someone like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, something like that. I don't believe that the Bills go out and then double the running back room that they had this year just because one guy came up out of contract. So that's kind of the tricky part, that to retain this room, will they go much above the $5 to $8 million they spend at running back total? It's going to be tough for me to see that.
Best case scenario, James Cook reveals why he was a second round pick, and you see him step up to be the guy that you hope he is, and then you don't feel the need to have to resign Devin Singletary. In that scenario, you got your starter on a hell of a cheap deal, and then depending on what happens, you could possibly have Moss enter next year. If Singletary is willing to take a cheap deal, you could obviously bring him back. Or you could take another late flyer on someone if you feel comfortable enough with James Cook to make him the starter next year and have someone else step up in the later rounds. But I think best case scenario, you have Cook show that he can be the guy, because then, damn, you're paying next to nothing at running back for that type of production if he can. So, and I did see a comment about don't forget Moss from Jason here. Hey, we haven't forgotten him, but he's going to have to step up to make us to believe in him. I haven't given up hope yet, but he's really going to need to step up, and it's going to be hard with him.
Well, you have James Cook, Tywan Jones, Devin Singletary on the roster. He's going to have to beat out Duke Johnson and maybe a little bit of push from one of my favorite UDFAs in Raheem Blackshear. So he's going to have to make a push from the vet and the UDFA. So he's going to have a really motivated pass catching running back that has done it on an SCS level, an SEC level, BCS level, or he's going to have to do it against Duke Johnson, a guy that has shown stretches last year, who basically had a really great kind of closing part of the season, as well as a great dominant pass catcher back. He's going to have to prove that he's going to be able to do that and add value to what Devin Singletary can already do. Because he's certainly not going to be able to press like a James Cook in the receiving game, as well as Duke Johnson, maybe even Blackshear in the receiving game. So he's going to have to carve out that niche to prove that his value as a bruising ability, guy that can move the chains is going to be worth it over giving snaps to Devin Singletary, and maybe even having, it's marginal, but still the difference between Raheem Blackshear on the roster as a scratch and Zach Moss, you're talking about roughly $500,000 in a year that they could use some cap reserves. So it's not a guarantee to me, especially that might be a position group where Bean does feel like he can go into the cupboard and fill it with a 5th or 6th round draft choice. So I do believe that you could see something like that, Mike, out of this running back room. And at the end of the day, $5.5 to $6 million is all they're going to cap this year. At the end of I just do not see that going alone to Devin Singletary next year.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
So we'll see how that all amounts in the running back cap room and what they're able to do as countdown and training camp continues. Zach Moss is a good name to watch out for. Will he do enough? Will he do enough to make the roster? That's a big question.
I just have one last thing on this running back talk. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. Obviously, we're spending more time than what we should at running back, which is probably
it's their weakest room,
a position as we're making it seem right now on the show. But I liked a couple of the comments. Some people are saying Cook is a slicer or dicer. He's not big enough to get the bulk of the offense. That's a fair point. But then you see some of these over-unders saying that he should have over 1,200, 1,300 yards this year, which sounds ridiculous to me. But there's people that are covering the NFL that are a lot smarter than me putting out those numbers. What do they know? Do the Bills envision a bigger role for James Cook than maybe what we would have thought coming out of Georgia? That's a possibility. We'll see. Second thing, Devin Singletary. He's been the bell cow, but as we've seen in the NFL, especially our Buffalo Bills, things can change very quickly. I know these are previous regimes, but this is the team that had Travis Henry and decided to draft Willis McGahee. Had Willis McGahee, decided to draft Marshawn Lynch. Had Marshawn Lynch, decided to draft CJ Spiller, when they had Fred Jackson. So I know those are from very sad years in our franchise's history, but never take anything for granted. You can go from a bell cow one day to a nobody the next day. And then the third and final thing I want to say about the running backs, I saw a comment about taking a discounted 30-year-old Christian McCaffrey. And, it's kind of funny when you hear about a running back at the age of 30, you think it's a joke because you see them going to the downside of their NFL career. But then you forget the Bills literally had Frank Gore at like 35, 36 years old. We had Fred Jackson late into his career. If there's one franchise that's been okay with old running backs the last decade, it is the Buffalo Bills. So I don't think that's likely anytime soon, but never say never.
And as we reach, once again, 19 days countdown to training camp, part 2 here today on the Going Deep podcast, special edition, Tuesdays at 7 is our new showtime going forward through the season. All of our guests, all of our collabs, Tuesday at 7 is where you can find us, Kevin and Mike, here going forward. All of our promotions, you'll notice that. So kind of stay tuned on the Cover One Podcast Network. Great, only an hour away now from Mitch Marsh coming on here live on the Cover One Podcast Network with Eric, Anthony, and Kendall to kind of talk all things Bills, offensive line, Aaron Cromer, et cetera, whatever, film room, certain plays that they'll get into as well, that they'll highlight here with Mitch. So make sure you please check that out. But please smash the like button, review us on all your podcast, audio, video related. That means so much to us. But Mike, I saw some stuff about McCaffrey's being 30 and being acquired. Could he be a trade deadline? He's not 30. He's, I don't know why we're talking about 3 years from now. He's not 30. He's not even close to 30. So very young football
We're rushing
player.
his life a little bit.
Yeah, we're rushing his life 26. So like we're kind of rushing that a little bit. Absolutely as the season goes on, and if an injury happens here to Singletary, and all they have is Cook, or injury happens to Cook and all they have is Singletary, something like that, I don't think it's outlandish that the Bills would make a push at the running back room. Some of the over-unders based in Vegas, some of the running back rooms projections that we're seeing, you're right. Is there some rumors coming out from agents somewhere along the lines of the Bills, Aaron Cromer even? Are the Bills going to run the ball more? Are they going to keep Josh Allen fresh? They're matching it up with offensively. Look at that. Look at what they've done this offseason. Add offensive linemen, under the radar offensive linemen who run block well. Add another tight end. To run different personnel packages, 12, 22, all types of different personnel packages that involve 2 tight ends. Are they going to do that? Are they going to add a 6th offensive lineman in power sets? Are they going to, utilize Cook in a different way than we have envisioned right now? So I don't believe that it's just going to be the steadfast 5,000-yard K-gun, Josh Allen diving over people, making people miss, stiff arming, Supermaning to the first down in Nashville, Tennessee again. I do believe that you'll see some real changes around, and then adding Aaron Cromer, forgot that, along the offensive line. So I do believe that you'll see all of these changes come to fruition, and maybe Vegas has something. Maybe there is something that we don't know, that running is going to be pretty important. And maybe we can look back on this edition, part 2, and say, we covered that running back room inside and out, in hopes that, it's going to be a very useful and prominent room. And running back's huge. I mean, Devin Singletary's a beast in yak. He's a beast after contact. He has such good contact balance. Yes, he misses that very elusive speed and top end speed. And maybe he could do a little bit more with his first step. In my opinion, he's a little jittery, but does have a really great contact balance, bounces off attackers. He's hard to bring down, gets going. He's kind of more of what you're looking for as you get into the open field, but that receiving is decent at it, but never really amounted to a top end receiving back. And that's why they went out and got James Cook. So I do believe that the combination's a good combination. I don't believe that leaves room for Zach Moss, Mike, as the roster cuts down. Roster cut downs do happen as we approach training camp, and that room can change quickly. One injury, and maybe the most realistic option is seeing more Zach Moss, not acquiring a running back. But as we approach training camp, St. John Fisher, we talked a little bit about this last week. On Friday, we talked a little bit about going back to Fisher. Have you had any further thoughts on Fisher? Have you had any further thoughts on your opinions to our Tuesday crowd of what St. John Fisher could mean to both the team and their atmosphere and their bond, as well as the entire culture and hopefully extended community who now gets a chance to see the Bills again for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah, so I think it's a great thing. Like I said on Friday on our show, obviously a little bit different audience today with our new time slot on Cover One. I think it's a great thing. I wasn't always a proponent for continuing St. John Fisher for the long-term future, but after the last couple years of not having training camp in Rochester, I missed out on it. We didn't seem to get the same amount of updates from the media because they were closed off from practices. The access wasn't the same. One thing I've always appreciated about St. John Fisher is just the ability of us as casual fans to be able to just attend practices and see what goes on a daily basis. So not having that the last 2 years, this is going to be really nice. I know last year the Bills had 3 open practices at the stadium, and that was a cool thing for them to have. And they're still going to have their one night one at the Ralph on one of the Fridays. But it's going to be a nice vibe. What does it do for team building in 2022? Probably not the same as what it did in 1970 or 80. I know they weren't at St. John Fisher at that time, but I don't think team building is the same now as what it would be when you're doing two-a-days and really battling and grinding in the hot summer sun. It's just not the same. But overall, it's a good experience. Gives some nostalgia overall, and I think this is what the fans wanted, and good for the Bills to give us some fun towards the end of July, early August here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Cromer now. As former Bills center Eric Wood says, big time hire, an incredible offensive line coach. Austin Blythe once called him former Rams center, one of the best, most genuine coaches in the league. Olin Kreutz also said via Saints Wire, personally, he's one of the best coaches I've ever had. In Aaron Cromer, if I was to spend one more minute with him, I would have torn his head off. I get to the most out of him out of the building. Don't feel comfortable in there. Just really, really, really makes me grow as a person. So, I mean, you get to see all types of different personalities, and he's really hardworking. He's had really great mentors, in that fact. So there's definitely some really great experience that you're expecting out of Aaron Cromer. And, he's just a different style coach. I mean, he's going to get after you. He's going to get the most out of his guys. And, you'll see some very interesting changes. And I'll save this topic specifically so I wanted to do it's to 9 p.m. show with Eric, Kendall, and Ant, who will be going through some of these changes. So make sure if this is a topic that you're interested in, make sure you tune in here to Cover One in 1 hour, Mike. But we're kind of wrapping the top of the hour here. We appreciate everybody tuning in for this Tuesday edition. Once again, 7 o'clock, you can find the Going Deep podcast on all your platforms, as well as all your audio platforms too. If you want to watch into the on-demand replay, please make sure you do so. But Mike, Part 3 is coming up soon, next Tuesday. Make sure you tune in for our next topic that we'll be bringing you. How are you feeling? What's your overall attitude as we approach July 5th? I want it on record how at Mike_Bundt is feeling as we hit July 5th.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really confident. I'm feeling more confident than I did last season at this time. This is probably the best I've ever felt about the Bills in my life. And I was born in 1991, so I can't really comment about the Super Bowl teams because I was too young at that time. But during my life, this is the most excited I've been about the Bills. I felt that last year entering the year, they might have been a little bit too hyped, if that makes sense. They were coming off, obviously, a great year, 13-3, AFC Championship runner-up against Kansas City. But I didn't know if they were complete at that point in time. And I think early in the year, we saw some of the issues I had concerns with. The blocking wasn't there. They were too one-dimensional on offense. They would beat up on some weak opponents, but they would really struggle to win those one-score games, which a lot of that is luck, but still, to not win one of those games during an entire season is just incredibly unfortunate. And by the time the playoffs got here, they really started putting things together. offense was fine-tuned machine. Defense was still pretty strong, even without Trey White. I think if Trey White's healthy, they beat the Chiefs. They go to the AFC Championship, beat the Bengals. I think they win it all last year if Trey White doesn't get hurt on Thanksgiving against the Saints. But right now, I feel great because I look at an offense that I think should remain one of the top 5 in the NFL. I'm hoping the Bills aren't going to have bad weather every single time they take the field at Highmark Stadium this year, which will only help Josh Allen from a passing perspective. I like their offensive weapons. I like the emergence of Dawson Knox last season. I think they're going to be more effective in the run game. They have a better offensive line. Defensively, I think they have a better pass rush. I already felt super confident in the secondary, and now you add a first-round pick in Kaiir Elam. I like the linebacking core. This is the best team in football. Their odds just moved up to plus 650 to win the Super Bowl. We think they're the best team in the football. Bills Mafia thinks they're the best team in football. The bettors, the gamblers, the media, everyone thinks this is the team to beat. We haven't had that since the 90s. And I don't even know if in the 90s, if anyone really thought the Bills were the favorites, because you had the Dallas Cowboys and some NFC powerhouses going at them all the time. So, yeah, long answer short. Yeah, I'm pumped right now. And I really think it all comes together this year.
There you have it from Mike Bundt here on July 5th. But as well as me, all you can do is go to the gamblers, go to Vegas. They don't lose. They had to put higher odds on it. You're not going to win as much money. Only 6.5 times your money right now if the Bills win the Super Bowl. That means something. Unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're better or whatever. But it means something. They don't lose money much. They had to put lower odds on it that they would so it wouldn't pay out as much. So for me, it's a matter of, does it translate to the field? Mike just went down all the reasons why it could and why it should, between the emergence of Gabriel Davis, the second tight end, the depth at the offensive line unit. There's just so many changes. The Von Miller, Kaiir Elam, one of my biggest weaknesses of last year's team, as I've been pretty focused on it, was Levi Wallace. I thought he was a detriment to the team. He was masked by great safety play at corner one, some good linebackers, and a good defensive coach. But I just don't believe he was a very good football player. So we'll see what that amounts in Pittsburgh. Will that upgrade to Kaiir Elam matter? I think that could be a missing step. Will the upgrade to Von Miller over Jerry Hughes matter? I think that could be a final missing piece. So all of that put together on July 5th and Countdown to Training Camp Part 2 here at the Going Deep podcast. Please check out Part 1 where we talk about some gambling, some betting lines on the offense, as well as, training camp in general, our favorite tailgate traditions, and maybe some special food. Also check out my feed and see some homemade garbage plates. For anybody who did tune into Part 1, I'll show you what a garbage plate looks like homemade, and what you can get if you come to St. John Fisher College. And I'm assuming that some of us on the Cover One team will run into some of you guys here this year as we're doing some crossover content with all the different shows. And please check out all of our written content as well as our premium Slack channel, which is pretty cool community to be a part of. If you miss those Buffalo Bills message board days or those days to talking Bills and Twitter's a little cumbersome, make sure that's right. Make sure you check out the premium Cover One Slack channel where there's great conversation all the time, as well as all of our premium content across all of our writers. Some of the articles I already mentioned earlier that you can go and check out right now on the cover1.net website. But really appreciate everybody coming here for our first Tuesday at 7 edition. We appreciate being in this time slot and this upgrade for us and our show. We're looking forward to bringing you content right before the film room, and Eric Turner and Mitch Morse coming at you in 50 minutes. So make sure you stick around, tune in, ask them some questions, get involved in the film. We really appreciate having informed listeners that we can communicate with on a weekly basis. So make sure you stick around and do that with the team. Smash that 5 stars in Apple Podcast. And we appreciate you guys giving us 70 minutes here to talk football. And we'll see you next week on Part 3, Countdown to Training Camp, which will only be 12 days away, as well as
Kevin, defense next week.
Maybe we'll get back to some defense. We spent a whole defensive show 2 weeks ago.
We did.
Defensive expectations. Make sure you check out that show. Here.
I just can't wait. Kevin, once training camp is here, we don't need to just speculate do all this offseason mumbo jumbo. Football is almost here, Kev.
Can't wait I like talking even preseason gives me some good film and some good footage to actually see what Aaron Cromer's doing and actually see who's in the second unit. I love preseason football, and we're going to bring you great content. I might even bring you some crossover guests across the league in my portfolio of really great guests in the NFL. So thank you. Please watch out for we'll probably release our show guests on the coming weeks, and we hope to have some pretty big names for each edition. I plan to release a full schedule on who we're planning to come on to the Going Deep podcast here Tuesdays at 7. But all I can say is from Kevin and from Mike and from the Cover One Podcast Network, we'll see you now Tuesdays at 7. And we really appreciate everybody, all of you, from tuning in to our new show. And we look forward to having some more fun with you just now on Tuesdays. We'll catch you guys soon.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
Fridays to me, talking about the Bills. What else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One Network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action.